Last week, a bunch of mainstream media outlets started putting headlines saying that India has overtaken China in terms of population. Now, these are well respected media firms, but the headlines are misleading. They are misleading because they are based on a UNFPA's 2023 report. UNFPA, by the way, is United Nations Population Fund, and the reports are population projections. So UNFPA comes up with these sorts of reports every year. Last year, they had come up with a report in which they had put India behind China in terms of population by about 4 crore people, which is 41.9 million people. Whereas this year's report, 2023 report, has put India ahead of China by 29 lakh people, which is 2.9 million people. Now, the point is these are estimates for middle of 2023. Nobody really knows what the actual figures for India are because Indian government has not done its census for 2021. Now, when exactly India will overtake China in terms of population and what exactly is India's population right now is not the point of this video. In this video, I want to ask a question that in this situation where India is about to become the most populous country in the world, does India need an IVF industry? Yes, I am talking about IVF on an industrial scale because IVF is a thriving business in India. This business has three aspects to it. First, of course, is industrial. IVF or in vitro fertilization is a technique where you take out eggs from a person's ovaries, fertilize them with sperm in a laboratory, keep that embryo for 3 to 7 days, and then these embryos are transferred back to the person's uterus who's going to carry the baby over the period of gestation. What doctors usually do is they fertilize more than one egg at a time, just as an insurance. Now, from the given set of those fertilized eggs, doctors select which one has to be selected for further development based on which one has a best chance of developing into a healthy fetus. Traditionally, doctors have been doing this based on their skills, expert judgment, experience, but now AI is thought of as an alternative to do this selection. So AI will decide which embryo to has to be pushed into sentient existence and which ones are to be saved from all the suffering. That's just an interesting fact about IVF and AI. But IVF as a market in India has grown 20% year on year for the last 5 years. Now, it is estimated that about 3,37,000 IVF cycles are performed in India every year. The market size of IVF in India in 2021 was 746 million US dollars. That is estimated to grow to 1.4 billion US dollars by 2027. In Indian money, it is 6,000 crore rupees in 2021 and estimated to grow to 12,000 crore rupees by 2027. Now, this is even when IVF treatment in India is cheaper than many of the other countries in the world. Some are even dreaming of making India the IVF capital of the world in the situation when India is becoming the most populous in the world. The second aspect, of course, is social aspect. Now, there are two main potential customers for Indian IVF industry. Those from the richer nations like the US and the UK and so on can avail low-cost IVF facilities in India, producing what is called as fertility tourism. There are companies that advertise for these fertility tours. Now, India has long been an exporter of humans to the entire world. Indians emigrate to all countries in the world for better jobs, better education, money, lifestyles, and so on. As if that is not enough, India is now inviting people from outside to manufacture their own little humans to take away. The second type of growing IVF clients is local resident Indians themselves. Now, women's education in India is continuously on the rise. The total fertility rate, that is average children per woman, is also continuously on the decline. But even then, the desire to have child, the desire to have their own child is deeply ingrained into Indian psyche, into Indian social structure. That is why married couples are automatically and naturally expected to start having children. Starting a family is synonymous with having new children. And so many child-free women often feel this pressure of expectations. Having children is considered a deep biologically driven desire. even though there is no real scientific evidence for this. For example, let's take this study from American Psychological Association. That study states, and I quote, the desire to have children is readily shifted by subtle situational cues such as advertisements and social media feeds depicting positive images of parents and children. It explains how these positive situational cues create small nudges at a time towards that desire to have children. So it creates small nudges at a time, and over a period, these accumulate to form that desire. But on the other hand, the negative cues, the neutral cues, the ones which show advertisements with parent child relationship in a negative light, don't decrease, don't work the other way around. They don't give the opposite nudge in the same quantity. So, this increase in desire acts as a non returning valve, and you accumulate that desire, and then you start feeling that there is an inner desire you have to have a child. So they say that these small pieces build up over a period of time to create an impression in one's own mind that there is a strong, deep desire to have children. There are also correlative studies. So one Swedish study, for example, it is called as Businesses, Buddies and Babies, showed that, and I quote, that female individual fertility increases if a co-worker recently had a child. Now, I know that you'll say that these are Western women. Indians are different, they are traditional, they have a different culture, so this doesn't apply to India. But you need to consider 2 points here. First of all, Indians are humans, which is the same species as their Western counterparts. Secondly, the scientific studies which I have been quoting so far actually show that the desire to have children is culturally driven. It is not a biological desire like a desire to have sex, for example. It is a culturally driven desire. So the argument that Indians have a different culture doesn't cut through, because that is a whole point. The desire to have children is a culturally driven desire. Look for another example here on the Daily Beast. It quotes Professor of Psychology David Barash, and I actually quote, evolution has bestowed upon women a desire for sex and the equipment to have a baby. From here, free will steps in. It also notes that many scientists believe that the seemingly biological drive to have children is triggered more by culture than the biology. So, even if there is no real scientific evidence of instinctive desire to have children, many Indian couples who have fertility issues feel as though they are missing something essential to their inner being. This feeling is cleverly exploited by the companies which are designed to make money out of IVF technologies. Now, fertility or infertility, depending on the way which you look at it, is an issue in India. We now have more and more sedentary lifestyles. Also, women are marrying later in their lives, which I personally think is a good thing, because that gives women greater informed choices. But that contributes to the infertility issue. It is estimated that about 2.7 crore couples in India have fertility issues. These childless couples and their socially constructed feelings of emptiness are setting targets for these businesses who want to make money through IVF. These companies cleverly advertise and entice such people to fulfill their dream of parenthood by adding new humans to already overcrowded country and the planet. Our media, not surprisingly, works hand in hand with these money-making corporates. See as an example here, Times of India article which sugarcoats the fertility treatment. It says, and I quote, fertility is an emotional journey, and it is crucial to cultivate self-compassion toward maintaining hope and combating fertility issues with patience and positive attitude. Now, even if you are an antinatalist and you don't agree with someone for wanting to have a child, it is still true that these couples who want to have a biological child but cannot have them have to go through some really stressful, painful, emotional journeys. What Times of India is doing here is that they're positioning themselves on the good side of the problem. So, with having said that yeah, there is an emotional problem, they go through all of this suffering. Then they say, and I quote again, to ensure that as an industry, we are better equipped to help these struggling couples realize their dream of parenthood, and urge the regulators and government authorities to recognize infertility as a public health concern. Here is another example of another Times of India article which describes infertility as a societal health concern. Now, I, for one, cannot understand that the country which is going to become the most populous in the world, there is so much poverty, so much inequality, so many orphans, so many people, infrastructure is just reeling under the stress of all of this. And the inability to bring a new human into this country is a public health issue. It's a societal health concern. How does that work? Does the media not have any moral obligation to show the reality? Are they even not tethered to reality to start with? Anyway, we come to the third problem with IVF, which is the ethical. Now, I'm not someone who'll oppose capitalism at every single time. If there is an opportunity to help existing people reduce their suffering by making some reasonable profits as a compensation to the service that you provide, it should be exploited. A lot of life-saving and pain-reducing technologies have come through this mechanism, and that's a good thing. But how ethical is it to bring new sentient life into this world just for making money for self? That is a question I'm going to ask all these IVF companies, their agencies, marketing campaigners, government lobbyists, and media who all work together to form an ecosystem to suck in those vulnerable childless couples and in the process quite literally manufacture new humans. Then there are those childless couples themselves. And I'll need to be a little careful here because even though the root of their desires to have children may not be biological or instinctive, it may be social and cultural and so on, but the mere presence of such desires and their inability to fulfill those desires definitely causes them a lot of stress and pain and suffering. Even as an antinatalist, it would be wrong to make light of their plight and pretend to preach some ethics to them. But in the interest of those potential unborn beings, I would like them to consider a few important points. One is, how fair is it to bring someone into existence where they are bound to suffer before facing eventual death? You might say that they will also get pleasures of life, they'll get benefits of life, but are they deprived of those pleasures or benefits right now? Do they need them right now? They don't exist. They are not deprived of any of them. They would not be harmed if you don't bring them into existence. To be a little rude, nobody is begging you to give them birth. The couples who are traveling on fertility tours, paying hefty sums of money, going through so many security risks, need to consider that we are already 8 billion of us on this planet. They need to realize this. Every new human puts a big strain on the already existing resources, and every new human is going to go through serious suffering before eventual death. Please consider this. For the local Indian couples, I would like to ask, how fair is it to bring another human being into an already overcrowded country? How fair is it to those existing 25 million orphans who are in dire need of homes? How fair is it to create another being in need of those resources which could rather be directed to the existing people who are in need of them? How fair is it to all of this? How fair is it to your own country? These are the ethical issues and ethical concerns you have to face before you decide to have a new child. Finally, I would request these people to consider that they have a choice. They have a choice to think that having children is not a be all and end all of human life. You can have a happy, fulfilling life without having children. It is easy to say than do it, I know, but a transition from childless, which is a situation where you want a child but can't have it, to child free, where you don't want to have a child by choice, would help you get rid of all those accumulated desires to have children. It would also help keep that potential unborn being into peaceful nothingness of non suffering. And it will also help the existing 2.5 crore orphans who are in need of homes, who are in need of resources. By not adding another human onto this planet, and in India, especially when it is becoming the most populous country, you are helping those who are in need of existing resources. So, this inability to have children, in fact, is a privilege that you've got to help your country in the time when it is becoming the most populous in the world.